This all went down just last year. My buddy Jimmy is pretty well connected in the music scene, more specifically, the dance and electronic music world up and down the East Coast, especially in New Jersey and New York. Honestly, it's impressive what he and his crew have pulled off in just 2 years. Basically, they run these massive events at top-tier venues, usually the most popular clubs or party spaces in whatever city they land in. Then they book big-name DJs, some of them borderline famous, to headline. I'm not super into that world, so I can't name everyone they've worked with, but trust me, they've brought in some huge talent. Anyway, back to Jimmy, he and I go way back. I've known him for over 20 years, we grew up together and he's been my best friend for most of my life. Because of that, he always hooks me up. I, along with a bunch of our hometown crew, get into his events for free and get access to the VIP section where the talent hangs out. It's actually a pretty awesome experience, one I probably don't thank him enough for. So, Jimmy was set to throw his biggest event yet over the July 4th weekend at the Jersey Shore. Everyone from our circle was going, and he invited me to head down early with him. Of course, I said yes. Jimmy, Ryan, another close friend, and I made the hour-and-a-half drive and arrived at the venue about 4 hours before the doors opened. While Jimmy and his team got to work setting everything up, Ryan and I didn't really have much to do, so naturally, we started drinking early. Since the venue was providing unlimited alcohol to the staff, Ryan and I were free to help ourselves, and believe me, we did. By the time the first DJ started his set, we were already more than a little buzzed. But hey, it was the 4th of July weekend, so we felt like a bit of recklessness was allowed. A few more hours passed, and we were completely hammered. I honestly haven't been that drunk since, and I've had some wild nights. To be clear, we weren't acting like idiots. Ryan and I are grown, we can hold our liquor. We weren't puking or stumbling around, but our judgment and impulse control. Yeah, those were definitely impaired. Still, we were having a blast, from what I can remember, at least. As the night started to wind down, we hit that part of the evening where you either figured out your ride home or who you were leaving with, or both. Thankfully, Jimmy had rented an Airbnb close by and had beds set aside for Ryan and me, so getting home wasn't an issue. The second part, though, that was what we were focused on. So Ryan and I made our way over to the bar and started chatting with a couple of girls who caught our attention. One thing led to another, and pretty quickly we had some idea of how the rest of our night would play out. Neither Ryan nor I are supermodels or anything, but we're both over 6 feet tall. And for some strange reason, that's the one trait that seems to matter the most to girls on the Jersey Shore. Not looks, not style, not brains, just height. I wish I understood it, but honestly, the Jersey Shore female mindset is still a complete mystery to me. That I might be misremembering their names, but I'm fairly certain the girls introduced themselves as Gianna and Marcella. That's also about the time when my memory of the night starts getting fuzzy. Things get a little patchy from here, so bear with me. From what I do recall, it was Marcella who first suggested we all leave together to keep the party going elsewhere, and of course, Ryan and I weren't about to say no. That I might be butchering their names, but I'm pretty sure the two girls introduced themselves as Gianna and Marcella. Things started to get a little fuzzy for me around the time we met them, so the timeline from here on might have some gaps. From what I do recall, it was actually Marcella who suggested that the four of us leave and continue partying elsewhere, which, of course, Ryan and I weren't going to say no to. Before we headed out, Gianna handed each of us a drink, insisting we get on their level. Never mind the fact that Ryan and I had probably already consumed our combined weight in booze. I know, it's not common for girls to hand drinks to guys, kind of the opposite of what you usually hear, but these two didn't come across as sketchy. If anything, they looked like they came from money. Their clothes, jewelry, the way they carried themselves, it all gave off that vibe. After finishing the drinks, we all started walking toward the exit. Once outside, Marcella mentioned her place wasn't far, and that it was right on the beach. That actually caught me off guard. I was fully expecting to head back to our Airbnb. Normally, it's the guys offering a place to crash, not the other way around. But both girls insisted that Marcella's beach house was way nicer than whatever inland spot we had booked. And honestly, I believed them. Ryan didn't argue either. We strolled down the beach, still talking. The conversation felt surprisingly deep. The girls were smart, like, really smart, and seemed to know a lot about a bunch of random, interesting topics. I actually remember thinking how refreshing it was to talk about something other than clubs, drinks, or the usual shallow chatter you get from party scenes. Not just with girls, just people in general when they're that drunk that at some point, though, I started feeling different. Not just drunk, off. Like, my body felt heavier, like my own weight was pushing me down into the sand. It was as if I was melting into myself. My legs turned to rubber, and it felt like every step I took might be my last before collapsing. Even moving my arms or blinking became strangely difficult, like I was fighting against invisible pressure. There was even a moment where my hands and feet went a little numb. It scared me. But just as quickly as it started, it faded. The weird sensations vanished, and I was back to feeling just drunk again. Or at least I thought I was. That's when we got to the house. And I'm telling you, it was next level. Now, maybe it was the alcohol making everything look grander than it was, but it seriously looked like the kind of place a pro athlete would own. Right on the sand. Massive glass windows. Elegant lighting. We stepped inside, left our shoes at the door, and walked into what I think was the living room. I say, think, because the place didn't look like any living room I'd ever seen. It was clean and minimal, but somehow incredibly ornate at the same time. Like, there were actual sculptures on marble pedestals, but the space didn't feel cluttered or overdone. Everything was so well designed that it almost looked like the art was growing out of the walls, like it belonged there. My head was spinning, and clearly, so was Ryan's, because not even 15 minutes after we stepped inside that house, he and Marcella vanished somewhere deep into that architectural maze. That left me alone with Gianna. She leaned in like she was about to kiss me, and that's the last thing I remember. Not the kiss itself, just her leaning in. That's where everything cuts out. No sense of dizziness. No more drinks. Just a void. A blank, and it stayed blank for hours. Nothing I do, no matter how hard I try, brings those memories back. But here's the thing, I know I didn't black out in the traditional sense. My phone had texts sent from me throughout that time. I was conscious. Awake. Functioning. There's proof I was communicating. But I have no memory of sending any of it. Now before you assume I just drank too much, that wasn't it. I rarely black out, and even the few times I have, I always remember fragments. Bits and pieces. Something. Enough to piece the night together. But this time, nothing. Worse still, Ryan had the exact same experience. Same timeline. Same complete memory loss. That can't be coincidence. The next thing I remember is waking up. Not in a bed. Not on a couch. But in the middle of a bush. Sun beating down. Head pounding. Somewhere far from where the event took place, over an hour's drive away. At that point, I didn't even know that, because my phone was missing. So was my wallet. And my keys. Actually, they weren't just missing from my pockets, they weren't even my clothes. I was wearing someone else's shirt and pants. Not Ryan's. Not anything familiar. Just random, worn clothes. The only things I still had from the night before were my shoes, and even they were weird. No shoelaces. Completely soaked. I felt like I was waking from anesthesia, hazy, disoriented, and slow to even sit up. I just laid there, staring at the sky, trying to process what had happened. Where I was. Why I wasn't wearing my own clothes. Why my shoes were wet but I didn't smell like salt water or chlorine. Why nothing made sense. And then the panic kicked in. This wasn't a hangover. This was fear. A sick, stomach-turning kind. I had no clue how I'd gotten there. Did I get in a fight? Crash a car? Was I drugged? There was no anchor point. No memory. Just a black hole where the last 10 hours of my life should have been. I stood up. Trees surrounded me. No beach. No clubs. No signs of where I was, except for a 7-Eleven across the road. The only visible sign of civilization. So I headed straight there. Told the guy behind the counter my phone had been stolen and asked if I could use his. He stared at me for a second, maybe weighing if I was a scammer, but then handed me the phone. I called the only number I still had memorized besides my parents, my sisters. No way was I calling my mom or dad. She picked up immediately, and I did my best to explain. She gave me Ryan's number, which I called several times. No answer. That's when a darker thought set in. What if the same thing happened to him? Dumped. Lost. Drugged. Alone. I was about to call the police when, like something out of a movie, Ryan walked into the same 7-Eleven. We locked eyes, stunned, before dapping each other up like it wasn't the weirdest moment of our lives. He told me his story, and, of course, it was almost identical. Blackout. Lost clothes. No phone. No idea how he got there. That confirmed it, we were in something way deeper than just too many drinks. We flagged the police and gave our statements outside the store. To their credit, they listened, at first. But as we told more, the questions shifted. Were we sure we hadn't just wandered off drunk? Passed out somewhere? They weren't saying it outright, but it was clear they were skeptical. I pushed back, told them we didn't drunkenly walk an hour out of town into the woods. I don't think they appreciated that. I gave them my sister's number. She was tracking my phone through Find My iPhone. It pinged, parked in a random lot just a few minutes away. The officers agreed to check it out. And there they were. Both our phones, lying next to each other on the pavement. We were relieved to get them back, but that only reinforced the cops' idea that we just dropped them while drunk. They now doubted we'd even been robbed. Told us maybe we lost our wallets the same way. We tried convincing them to check out the house Marcella had taken us to, but they brushed it off. Said we probably remembered it wrong. One officer actually said, "Happens more than you think." Then they gave us cards and told us to call if we remembered more. And just like that, they left. Once they were gone, I finally opened my phone. And things only got stranger. There were messages sent to dozens of people, Jimmy, my parents, co-workers, even a few girls I'd been talking to. All perfectly normal. Stuff that sounded just like me. Calm. Coherent. But, the messages contradicted each other. One text told Jimmy we'd crashed at a buddy's place. Another said we were home safe. One to my dad mentioned a couch. Another text to a girl was just me casually saying I was hanging out at home thinking of her. None of it added up. I called Jimmy. He answered immediately, relieved and panicked. Said he thought we'd died. When he picked us up, Ryan and I immediately canceled our cards. Oddly, none of them had been used. Despite being missing for hours. Despite likely being in someone else's hands. On the ride back, we couldn't stop talking about it. Trying to understand. None of it made sense. Sure, we'd been drugged, that part seemed obvious. But what kind of drug works like that? Not like roofies. Those make you unconscious. Not functioning. But we were texting people. Acting normal. Someone must have driven us out of town. Someone changed our clothes. And for what? Jimmy thought we were targeted. But that didn't fit either. We approached them, not the other way around. Were those girls even who they said they were? Was that even their house? Eventually, we drove all the way back to the beach and walked along the boardwalk trying to retrace our steps. We figured if we found the house, maybe we'd get answers. And, somehow, we did. Same house. Same walkway. We rang the bell. An older man opened the door. I asked if Marcella lived there. Or if he had a daughter or granddaughter around our age. He looked confused, then told me no, absolutely not. I made up a quick story about a girl who lied about owning a beach house. He actually laughed. That was the end of it. But I walked away with a horrible feeling in my stomach. Not fear, just wrongness. Like something had happened that night. Something awful. Something I'll never understand. And I don't think we were just lucky. I think someone changed their mind at the last second. About what they were going to do to us. For a long time after that, I believed those girls were part of something much bigger than we could ever understand. That we came this close to being taken, or worse, and somehow escaped by chance. I know I'll probably never get any answers. But if anything ever happens again, you'll be the first to know. My name's Ariel, and I live in Georgia, not too far from the Alabama border. A few summers ago, I drove out to a small town in Alabama for a 4th of July cookout my college friend Isabel was hosting. One of those classic backyard gatherings, paper plates, cheap fireworks, and way too much food. Honestly, it was one of the better nights I'd had in a long time. The energy was great, kids running around with sparklers, people laughing, music playing. Real wholesome stuff. I didn't head out until just after 10 p.m. Looking back now, that was probably the first mistake. That part of the state gets really quiet once the sun goes down. The drive home would take just over 2 hours, mostly back roads, long stretches of 2-lane highways, nothing but woods on either side. Every once in a while I'd pass a lonely farmhouse or an old church, but mostly it was just pure darkness. I had music playing low and was still riding the high from the party, but I won't lie, there's something about driving through empty, unlit country roads that gets under my skin, even when there's no real reason to be scared. About 30 minutes in, I noticed a pair of headlights in my rearview mirror. I didn't think much of it at first, assumed someone else had just joined the same road. But then I started noticing little things. It was a gray Nissan Altima, nothing unusual except the bottom half of it looked caked in dried mud. I could see it clearly every time we passed a dim overhead light at a random intersection. What bothered me wasn't the car itself, it was how it was acting. No matter how much I sped up or slowed down, it stayed exactly the same distance behind me. I sped up by 5 or 10 miles per hour, so did they. I slowed way down, they did too. We were on a road where people pass each other constantly, and it's legal to do so in most stretches. I even moved over a little to signal they could go around me, but they didn't. They just stayed back there, matching every move I made. That's when I decided to test them. There was a small road coming up on the left, looked like a short residential stretch with maybe 4 houses tucked behind some trees. No reason for anyone else to turn there. But I did. Sharp left, no hesitation. And wouldn't you know it, 10 seconds later, the Altima turned down the same road. That's when I knew. No more doubts. They were following me. My stomach sank. That kind of fear, the real kind, is unlike anything I can describe. It wasn't just unease anymore. I felt like I was being hunted. My pulse was racing like someone had just pulled a gun on me. That's the best way I can explain it. There was no logic left, just pure panic. I didn't know what they wanted. But nothing about it felt random. I just wanted to get somewhere safe. Somewhere with lights. People. Anything. As if the night wasn't terrifying enough, I suddenly heard the chime, that one. The near empty gas tank chime. My car is old, a 2012 Corolla with a lot of miles and plenty of quirks. Sometimes the light gives me 20 miles. Sometimes I'm lucky to get 10. And out here, there are no gas stations for miles. I grabbed my phone and searched for the nearest 24-hour station. 8 miles away. It might as well have been 80. But I had no choice. Stopping wasn't an option. Not with that car still glued to my tail that I considered calling the police, but out here. I figured it'd take ages for someone to show up. And honestly, I felt like calling would somehow make it worse. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I'm just being real about how I felt. Like acknowledging the fear would make it more real. A few minutes later, the gas needle dropped to empty. Like, empty. I tried to stay calm, but every creak of the car felt louder. Every second dragged. I felt helpless. Scenarios started flashing in my mind. What would happen when the car died? What would they do to me? But then, like a miracle, I saw it. A glowing gas station sign up ahead. I almost cried. I took the turn fast and pulled into the lot without a second thought. I parked, flung the door open, and ran inside without even closing it behind me. From inside the store, I could still see the Altima through the window. It had pulled up just to the edge of the lot. The engine was still running. No one got out. It just sat there. Whoever was in there, watching. Thinking. Deciding. Then, without warning, it sped off. Peeled out and vanished down the road we'd come from. I told the guy at the counter what had happened, and he immediately offered to call the police. I agreed. I gave a full report, but even after talking to them, I still felt shaken. There's no version of that night that doesn't involve someone following me for a sinister reason. And I never want to feel that kind of fear again. I made it home. Swore I'd never drive those roads alone at night again. But the story doesn't end there. A few weeks later, I was sitting on my couch with the news playing in the background. Just noise, until a report caught my ear. 2 men in Alabama were wanted for multiple crimes, armed robbery, attempted murder, all kinds of charges. The anchor mentioned that authorities believed they were driving a stolen gray Nissan Altima. Last seen headed east. When I heard that, I just froze. It hit me like a brick. I knew in my gut it was the same car. The same people. I couldn't prove it, of course. But the timing, the location, the exact description, it lined up too well. I reported everything to the police. I told them what happened. And that's when it really sank in. My own hesitation might have stopped them from being caught that night. My fear, my disbelief, my decision not to call earlier, it haunts me. I never got an update. Nothing ever came of it. I don't even know if they were caught. But I think about it often. What could have happened? What almost did? And if anything else changes, I'll